I love controversy. Sometimes it's very entertaining. But today, we want to talk about business. And we want to talk about this controversy that Anheuser-Busch is involved in. Now, my name is Jim Gibson, and this channel talks about business and business-related items. So we're not going to get into the politics, but what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how Budlight is handling this controversy and what you can learn from it as a business owner. So first of all, if you don't know what I'm talking about here in April 2023, then you probably don't have internet access, because it's all over the internet, it's all over YouTube, it's all over TikTok about what Anheuser-Busch has done with their product, Bud Light. Now, it involves an influencer that they hired, Daylin Mulvaney, to endorse their products. So, I mean, this is so ridiculous that there's three things I want to talk about concerning business that they must have forgotten. These are basic stuff, and for a big corporation to have overlooked these three things, I find it amazing. But listen, if you're in business, don't overlook these three things, because they're really important, especially if you're the business owner. So first, do you have a mission statement there at Anheuser-Busch? Does that mission statement says, we want to be in controversy and divide our customers? You know, I used to think mission statements were kind of a waste of time. Sometimes I'd go and I would visit a corporation or something, and I'd be waiting in the lobby to have a meeting with the head person, you know, the decision maker and things like that. And I'd kind of look around the lobby, and a lot of times businesses would put their mission statement right up there on the wall, right next to the stupid statements like, we all rode together, it's teamwork, you know, the platitudes. You know, they're kind of cool, but they don't really mean anything. But I would read the mission statement, and I used to think sometimes, yeah, the mission statement is so squishy that it really doesn't mean anything either. But I was kind of curious about it. Didn't put much, what would you call it, trust or concern into their mission statement, but they had mission statements. And if you're a business owner, you should have a mission statement. Now, I wonder what the mission statement is for Coors Light. I mean, I have no idea what it is. And I don't know if this lady, the senior vice president for marketing, has any idea either. So you got to have a mission statement. Now, one of the key things with a mission statement is stick with your mission. What is your mission? Stick with it. Don't go astray and do other things. Now, I ran an IT company. It was a national IT company. We did installs all over the United States, thousands of them, for big corporations who had multiple locations. That was my mission. That was my goal, was to work with people like that. So when a neighbor would be talking to me about different issues that are going on in the neighborhood, I didn't try to sell them a nationwide installation company that could handle all their IT. And the reason why I didn't, because they weren't my customer. And that's the second point. It didn't fit my mission statement. The second point is know your customer. And that's where I think Anheuser-Busch really blew it. But the third one, the last thing, and we're going to talk about that a little later here. But you got to know your customer. Who is your customer? That's the person you should be focused on. What can you do to serve your customers, to do better? There's sometimes, I had customers sometimes that cost me money to service them, but I knew that if I solved their problems, if I took care of their needs, everything else, and I stayed focused on them, not me as a company, but on them. I knew my customers, I knew what they needed, and I wanted to make sure I did everything possible to meet their needs. I was totally thinking about them. With that in mind, I'm not going to come up with some other harebrained idea. In other words, I did IT systems that were installed all throughout the United States. So when one of my employees came to me and they said, Jim, there's a big market out there for solar energy. We could put these solar panels up on the roof. We have technicians that could easily transition into solar. And at first I sat there and I said, let me think about that. Let me investigate it. So I did some study. I spent a couple of months studying about solar panels and about how to install them and all the regulations that are involved and how you get customers and everything else. And then one morning I woke up and I said, Jim, these aren't your customers. You're not going to be able to sell solar panels to a Fortune 500 company that needs installs in Milwaukee by Wednesday. So I said, no, I am not going to put any more resources into solar panels. I'm going to focus on my customer and my customer base. And that's it. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to focus on my customer base. Because they're my customers. They're the ones that pay the bills. I work for them. They don't work for me. I am not trying to get them to buy solar cells or spare tires for their VW. I am a IT company, or was, because I sold my company. That's another video. We should talk about that, why you should build a company that you're going to sell. But to make a long story short, I am not going to sell solar cells because that's not what my company does. And that's not what my customers need. I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can to determine and to see the needs of my customers and then become the best expert and the best supporter of these products. And this is where Anheuser-Busch really blew it. And I'm not saying Budlight blew it. Anheuser-Busch blew it. Take responsibility for your actions, Anheuser-Busch. When I was in the Marine Corps, and this is the third thing and the most important thing. When I was in the Marine Corps, one thing that I learned was that everything that happens or fails to happen that you're responsible for, then it's your fault. So if things don't work out and you're in charge, it's your fault. But somehow Anheuser-Busch executives don't know what in the world is going on in their own company. And once they found out, they said, it wasn't our fault. We didn't know what was going on. Jeez. I don't know how to express my thoughts on that. But anyway, getting back to the Marine Corps, I remember a situation in the Marine Corps while I was in officer candidate school that they gave us a weekend off, which was like gold. That was great. And I was in Quantico, Virginia, and I decided I'd go up to Philadelphia, and I had a car. I drove up to Philadelphia, and they're visiting my future wife, my fiance, and then something? I knew there was a snowstorm coming, and I didn't pay any attention to it. And when it was time to head back, I went out to my car, and the snow was up to the mid door on the car. So I called in. Anybody could be reasonable about that. We just hit a snowstorm. So I called in and I said to the person, the officer in charge, the duty officer that day, I said, look, I'm stuck in Philadelphia. And the roads aren't plowed and everything else, and I'll get back as soon as I possibly can. But the bottom line is I can't get back by tomorrow morning at the formation. So the person said, well, Jim, you're supposed to be back here, but, be careful, stay where you're at, and when the roads are plowed and you can get back safely, you come on back. And I thought, yes, another day with my fiance. Fantastic. I really wanted to spend that time anyway. So, I was all happy, drove back down to Virginia and everything else. And as I walked into the unit, the duty officer said, hey, Jim, the CO wants to talk to you. I said, yes, sir, no problem. So I knocked on the door, walked into the CO. He was a major and I was a candidate. I was not anything at that point, no rank. And he said, I had to have a little discussion with you there, candidate. He goes, you should have been here, this morning when we had formation. And I said, yes, sir, but I have an excuse. My excuse is the storm. And he said, that's not an excuse. You're responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen. And yes, even to yourself, you are responsible. There are no victims here. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is unusual. I thought I had a really good excuse, a sound excuse that would allow me to have a day off. But he taught me that lesson that day. Even though I said, well, sir, I don't control the snow. I don't plow the roads. He goes, yes, but you should have known that storm was coming. You should have paid attention. You should address this issue and had plans ahead of time. You don't wait till things happen to you. You make things happen. And you should have been aware of this, and you should have not allowed yourself to stay longer in Philadelphia than was necessary to get back to the unit. When you saw there was a problem, then you needed to take action. Now, in this case, how does it apply to Budlight, Anheuser-Busch, or whatever? I think they made a big, major mistake on this. Now, I think that when they come back, and as New York Times said, no one knew at the senior level that this was even happening. Well, you know, my opinion, if you're the board of trustees with this company, you need to fire that activist marketing person, because she's more interested in her activism than she is in your product. She's more interested in her ideas of changing the world rather than making this product more profitable for you. She's responsible. But you know something else? So is a person above her, all the way up to the CEO. And I personally, if I was on the board, I'd be calling for next role in this situation. They need to take responsibility. And the most lame thing I ever heard is when the CEO stands up there and he says, "No one knew that this was happening." It's your responsibility, CEO. The same thing with you, it's small businesses. It's your responsibility to know your business. It's your responsibility to know what's going on. Take responsibility. That's another thing in the Marine Corps they used to teach us. They said, seek responsibility and take responsibilities for your action or your inaction. So your inaction, you're laying back and not paying attention to these things. It's your responsibility, CEO, and I doubt the board has enough guts to fire you, to be honest with you. But
so it's your fault.
No, it wasn't me. It was...
First rule of leadership. Everything is your fault.
But
It's a bug-eat-bug world out there, Princess. One of those circle of life kind of thing.
But you should be fired for this, because you've offended you've offended your customer base. You completely offended them. How could you possibly do that? You're very successful in hiring an activist that completely offended your base. How would you do that? You have to work on that. So I would fire the person that hired this lady. And the reason why is they knew they were hiring an activist. I mean, come on, you're going to hire someone from Harvard and they're not going to have an agenda? Now, let me be clear. We all have opinions and we all have agendas. You know, I have them. But when I work for someone else, I work to make their product the most successful product, and I keep my political viewpoints and my personal opinions out of it. And if I can't agree with what you're doing, then I go get another job. Okay? In this case, she was interested in changing the world, not making the product better, not trying to attract more customers. I mean, this is absolutely clear who the customer was in this case. And I don't know what your mission statement is, but anybody knows anything about beer would have known who your customers are, your base's customers. Are you trying to change the world? Are you trying to sell more products? You have a fiduciary responsibility to your stock owners to make your company as profitable as it possibly can be. You shouldn't be hiring activists, people who have spent years in the college situation such as Harvard, and now they come with all that knowledge of activism. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them come with that activism. And that's how they come to your company, and that's why they produce. That lady thought it was a great way to go. And let me tell you, she's spending millions of dollars, and you people didn't know about it. And I have problems with that if I was a stockholder in your company, that you're not paying attention to things like this. It's as critical as anything you do in this case. It's as critical as your product. It's your product image. And yet you completely blew it. And then they come up and say, well, we didn't know about it. It was unusual, and now we're paying attention. Oh, come on, man. You paid to pay attention. You only have one job, okay? It's to take care of your company. You only have one job. It's to make it profitable, for the owners of that company. That's all you have, and you screwed up. Let me quote something else here, okay? And it was CNN. I mean, CNN, come on, they're out there. They have more market share than anyone else. And they're saying Budlight's inclusive ad campaigns are good for business. Jeez, morons at CNN. The average person using your product knows better than this. Probably you should hire some of them to help you in this area. Find the average person. They don't need a college degree from an Ivy League college. They're probably the worst people to hire. I hired one time, and I know from experience, the worst person I ever hired. But listen, the bottom line is, look at your customers. What is your statement, your mission statement? What is your mission statement? Follow your mission statement or work on it. And then secondly, hold people accountable for their decisions. And I'm not talking about this Dylan person. I'm sure the mission statement there with Dalen is that to make as much money as possible and to gather as many followers as possible. So they're doing exactly what they're supposed to, that organization. Your organization is supposed to sell beer. Simple as that. Sell beer, man. Not become a changer of society, I invite you to hire someone that's not a college-educated person, that has some common sense, and then at the same time, man up, whoever the CEO is. Maybe woman up, I don't know. I don't know who your CEO is. But I tell you what, this is not showing leadership at all. To sit there and say, well, it's not our fault. We didn't know what was going on. Well, you're a complete idiot if you don't know what's going on, okay? So, own the situation. Even if you don't know what's going on because you failed to investigate, own the situation and take responsibility for the situation and show some leadership. Well, thank you for your time. I hope I've given you some insights for you as a small business owner. Have a serious, detailed mission statement and stick to it. Secondly, know your customers. Know them in detail. Know who they are. Your job is to serve them if you want to grow, if you want to have a serious business. And lastly, take responsibility for everything that happens or fails to happen. And don't be stupid. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.